Hi, this is Eric Adair, Senior Manager of Codes and Standards for HPBA. If you weren't able to join us at Expo this year, I wanted to share with you an update we provided regarding UL's new solid fuel insert standards, specifically looking at the requirements for installers. The new standards are probably going to be out later this year, and appliances might be ready, listed to them by the heating season this next year. If you have any questions in the meantime, please feel free to reach out to me at adair@hpba.org. And I hope to see you at next year's Expo, March 26th through the 29th in New Orleans. Thank you.
Okay. So the first thing is, what is happening with the world of inserts now? For solid fuel inserts, we have two new binational standards, USA and Canada. One is UL-ULC 1390. The other one is UL-ULC 1391. 1390 covers inserts for masonry fireplaces. UL-ULC 1391 covers inserts for factory-built fireplaces. Now that one's new. Hearth mount as well. All right. Forgive me, I'm going to keep going with the inserts because it gets too wordy afterwards. But you're absolutely right, and hearth-mounted stoves as well. Thank you. All right, so 1390 is masonry, 1391 factory built. Now, 1390, we already have something like that in Canada, but we've never had it in the US. And 1391 is a brand new animal. So we're going to have both these. In the US, what has been used in the past is UL 1482. Now that's still the standard they use for freestanding wood stoves, and it will still be used for freestanding wood stoves, but right now it cannot be used to list inserts anymore. That door got closed. It was never intended for inserts, but that's what they used because they didn't have anything else. That was the closest thing. Because what's an insert? It's basically a freestanding stove with its legs knocked off and shoved into a fireplace. That's essentially what it is, so that's what they went with. They've been doing this for 40 years. It's just the way it works. So, but 1482 will be used as a freestanding one, but for inserts, 1390 or 1391 is going to have to be used. In Canada, they do have their own standard for inserts right now for masonry fireplace inserts, and this is ULC S628, and it will be superseded by 1390 when it comes out, and it's coming out soon. All right, so why are the new standards needed? Well, it's very simple. We never had it, right? Fire inspectors went to UL saying, hey, we've had some issues in the past, incidents, fires that have occurred. And hey, wait a minute, those inserts didn't actually have a dedicated standard. How come? So because there's no dedicated standard, because there was no consistent means for testing, they used 1482 as I mentioned, but inserts aren't in that standard. And in Canada, we had a masonry room, but not in the US. So that's why essentially we need an insert. We need new standards. So the manufacturers and the certification agencies, they did do additional testing when they actually listed this. But who's to say how it's done? A standard is there so everybody is on the same page. Well, in this lab, they might do it this way. In that lab, they might do it something different. Now, they're putting their name and reputation on this, so they are actually doing diligent testing. But it's not codified, it's not unique, it's not cohesive. So we definitely want to get that. And of course, as I mentioned, incidents have occurred. Manufacturers did not provide necessarily the proper information or sufficient information for an installer to basically complete their installation. They didn't give you proper direction necessarily. For the installer, you guys are kind of left making sure, how do I fit this 10-pound insert into a 5-pound fireplace? And it's a little uncertainty on what you can and can't modify. All right, well, as anybody that's ever dealt with any liability issues knows, whoever had their fingers on it last, they're the first person they get looked at. All right? And poor workmanship. I'm not pointing any fingers here, but I think we all know there are people out there in the field that have done less than smart things with inserts and any installations, right? I won't dwell on that and I'll let your mind run wild. And because I know nobody here has done it. And the reason why I actually know that is because you're all here being diligent. You're all learning. You all want to be on top of the game. So I actually know it's not you. But there are others out there. All right, so why didn't we have a standard previously? How come? Where is it? Well, as I kind of alluded to a little earlier, the inserts we've been using in 1482. Why? Because it worked. It was first published in 1979. And for anybody, do we have any Travis dealers here? Any Travis dealers? Gotta see a few hands. There on the left there on the picture is a very young Kurt Rumens. For those of you, I thought you might get a kick out of that. But that's also in 1979, same year as the first UL 1482. That's an insert. And they put that in there. So it's like, hey, they went to UL and said, I got this that I want to put in there. What do I test it to? UL said, well, let's modify it. We'll throw some thermocouples around and make sure it does what it needs to do, and it's good. So UL CS 628 didn't get published until 93. 1482 was modified for testing the inserts, and again, nothing else was available. And then the industry collectively, all the manufacturers and the certification labs kind of got together and said, well, this came up in 1990s, about when I started getting in the industry. And then again, they discussed it in 08, but hey, what happened in 08? Does anybody remember the housing crash? So nobody wanted to take on a big mammoth project like this and chase it down. So it sat there. It was discussed, we all acknowledged, like, yep, that's a problem, we want to address it. But how do we go about doing that? There was no consensus. The housing crash occurred, and there's just too many issues. How are you going to measure every single fireplace out there? How are you going to deal with one? Fireplace companies have been out of business, and you're going to stick an insert in there. A little odd. How do you deal with that? So how are we collectively dealing with this issue? The UL, after being approached by these fire inspectors saying, hey, there's no standard, help us out here. So they formed a task group in 2021. Actually, they kind of formed it at the end of 2020, but 2021 is when it started rolling. They have dedicated, they're going to develop these two standards, 1390 and 1391. And I'm going to keep using those terms because that's just the way I know it. 1390 and 1391. 90 is the masonries, 1391 is the factory-built fireplace inserts. They're going to require testing of inserts into the fireplaces. Okay, so the labs were already doing that, but now it's going to be codified. Now it's going to be everybody on the same page. They're going to require inspection of the existing fireplace system. I said that slowly for a reason. You guys, the installers, are going to have to go out there and inspect the existing fireplace system before an insert gets put in. That's critical because nobody wants any fires. The manufacturers are going to have this whole detailed set in the standard that talks about what the instructions will say. And they will have to give you detailed installation instructions. I'll go into more detail about this in a minute. So the UL is developing also a computer simulation. The idea is that instead of doing every permutation of fireplace and insert out possible, which is going to run into the thousands and thousands and thousands, instead they're doing the idea is they're going to do real world testing with real inserts and real fireplaces, but they're trying to develop a computer modeling system so that you can actually say, okay, let's make sure if we did this and modified that and changed that, what's going to happen? And so they're working on this right now. So this should facilitate more inserts down the line. It's not required right now, but this is what's going to help with this out. It's all going to be verified with in-lab physical testing. So they're trying to be very diligent about all of this. All right, so who's involved in this? Just to let you know what's happening. It's not a bunch of cabal people in the back, discussing this. So right now, the task group actually has UL representatives, both the testing side and the standards writing side. All right, so that, because UL is not a monolith. You have certification agencies, the listing agencies, because not everybody's UL. We got Intertech, we got PFS, we got Omni. We have appliance manufacturers, because for a while, we actually didn't have some involved, and we really need the appliance manufacturers involved because they're the ones ultimately that are going to create this thing. And we have installers involved. I know there's at least one in the audience right now. So we have installers involved that are also doing this because they need to tell us how the heck they encounter stuff in the field. And then you have fire investigators, some of the people that originally kicked this ball down the road. And then also we have some various other subject matter experts, general interest people, and oh, by the way, somebody from HPBA. So this is a good group, and I think we're all rowing towards the same general direction. We have a couple different philosophical ideas on how to get there, but we're all trying to make sure this is a safer install. So when are we going to see new standards? Actually, more for you guys. You care about when you're going to see the inserts, but so the standard itself, 1390, that's the easier one. This is basically an updated version of the Canadian standard. But this is going to be published here middle of this year. That's when I'm expecting it. It's going through its final machinations right now. The content development is done. We should see the standard itself here in the middle of this year, I'm hoping by June. 1391, as you can probably imagine, is a little more involved. Most of that is also mostly done. We're still, the task group right now is going through all the comments when it went out for public comment review. They got these comments back in saying, do this, don't do this, what about the other? And so they're working through those comments pretty much as we speak. And so there's some testing and development that's pending still. Likely that one's going to be published later. I'm expecting that to be published by the end of this year. Now, why does this matter to you? Because nobody can move until there's a published standard. The test agencies are not going to build these things and test things until there's a published standard. So, yep, that's it. Even though the content development's done, they're still not going to go there. And they can't publish anything, so we have to have it published first. Then we have the certification agencies, the listing agencies, and the manufacturers can then test their product. Manufacturers can start building these in their own test labs right now that they have if they want to, and that's fine. Possible to have inserts listed because there's a whole process about grabbing your insert, getting it on the certification agency's docket, and then getting those things tested. That takes a while. Probably going to have these by the end of the year. Maybe in time for the heating season start, but I wouldn't count on it. I'm going to say probably the masonry inserts ready by the end of 2024, so maybe the second half of the heating season, certainly for next year. The inserts for factory-built fireplaces, that's going to be later, probably going to be middle of next year. So probably for the 2025 heating season is my guess. All right, because right now we're not sure, we're not exactly sure of the time schedule. All right, so what are the manufacturers going to have to do with all this? The new inserts are going to have to comply with new standards. So anything that's in development right now, they got a great grand new insert, they're ready to bring it to market, they can't. Why can't they? Because there's no standard for them to work off of. The only thing they have is 1482, and the door has been shut on 1482. They can't use it. That was the first thing the task group did. I wasn't in favor of it, but first thing the task group did was they closed the door in 1482, can't use that for inserts anymore. So right now we're kind of in the doldrums. Can't move any inserts right now. So we need these to, they're going to need to test and list to this new standard. Existing model inserts, ones that have been listed to 628 or 1482, what are they going to do with it? Those have a certain time frame, and it's between the manufacturer and the test labs to come up with a new time frame as when they have to comply with the new standard. Because of the timing, most of that timing has basically exhausted itself. So they pretty much have to come up with a new standard by this point in time, but it's up to them. So you might still find a few new inserts out there that have already been listed and can still be used. In order for them to comply with the new standards, they're going to have to provide instructions and details on how it's going to be installed. And they have a whole list. They're going to have, it will be required in their instructions, how to inspect the existing fireplace and chimney system, how to verify, this is a new one, how to verify the existing factory-built fireplaces can support the weight of the insert. This is one of the issues that came up. All right, masonry inserts are a little easier, but factory-built fireplace inserts, great, I stick it in there, and it's a builder box, crunch, 400-pound insert getting stuck into a factory-built fireplace. It's a good chance of crunching it. Maybe not right now. Maybe it happens in 3 years. This is an issue. How do we do this? The manufacturer will have to tell you, the installer, how to verify it. Okay, they're also going to have to tell you what must be repaired of the existing fireplace system, whether it's the masonry or the factory built. What has to be repaired? You just can't stick it in a thing with holes sticking out of it, chimney falling over. All right, what can be modified? Because you can't do it. Back in the old days, there was no information, right? It was Wild West. I have literally seen an insert shoved into a fireplace where the back was cut out, the sides were cut out, and the bottom was cut out. You know, come on. You're asking for a fire to happen in the house. So we don't want that. So this is what they're going to say. You can only do this, this, and this, and that's it. Anything more, you got to say no. So they're going to give you a step-by-step installation process. So give you clear diagrams, clear information. And they're going to give you a liner and cap requirement. I'm going to touch on that again in a moment, but I want to hit you here. It's not going to be stick the liner cap on top of the chimney and poke the cap through. It's not going to be that simple. There's going to have to be a modification. Installers, this is the slide for you. Installers are going to have to be, you are going to have to perform at least an NFPA 211 level 2 inspection. I'm hoping everybody here knows what that is, but if you don't, go find out. Or if you're in Canada, a wet level 2 inspection. That's minimum. Minimum. You might have to poke holes in this if you're not quite sure. Not quite getting to a level 3, but maybe a borescope is warranted. Really, it really might be. It's going to save you in time. Now, I realize the homeowner may not like it, but they're going to like a fire in their house a whole lot worse. Okay, you must repair the existing fireplace and chimney as necessary. So if you've got mortar cracked, if you're going to do this you're going to have to figure this out in one way or the other. Otherwise, don't do the insert. They're going to give you criteria. So instead of you guys twisting in the wind of going, well, I don't know if I can do this or can't do this, but I got an angry homeowner who says, I want this in there, you will also have criteria that says, these are the checkpoints. Oh, it doesn't fill it? I can't do it. And neither can the guy down the street or the guy the town over, because they're not supposed to do it. Here's my criteria. Everybody's going to be on the same page. This is the good. This is the good. Out of all this bureaucracy and hoops that you're going to have to jump through, this is the good part of it. You will have to follow the manufacturer's insert instructions. Again, something is so you have a check mark. Oh, I did this, I did this, I did this. Don't deviate. Follow it. Liability goes to them. It gives you defensibility. You're not stuck twisting in the wind. We don't want you to. We want everybody on the same page. It's not going to be bulletproof. Nothing is, right? But at least you've got a rule book to play off of. You must install a full liner. I mentioned this earlier. I'm mentioning it again. Must install a 1777 liner in Canada ULCS 640. It can be installed. Here's the thing. For anybody that really knows their codes, a 1777 liner cannot be installed in a factory-built chimney. It can be in masonry chimney, sure, no problem. Factory-built chimney is not allowed. It's outside the scope of the standard. Guess what? It's going to be allowed as a part of the 1391 listing, and also a 90 for a hybrid. So as part of these two new standards, you can use my 1777 liner that I'm going to stick in my insert installation, and if I put all that there, now it's going to be good. The whole system will have the golden stamp of approval by the certification agency. I'm seeing I'm seeing a head shaking over there. But that's the way they're going to end up doing this. And then we're going to go back, the task group is going to go back to these other standards and turn right around and say 1777 is going to get updated so it can be installed there. That will be within. So 1777 liner, does it have to be insulated? Not necessarily. It depends on the circumstances of the liner. You can put it in a bare liner. It's not a great idea. And I highly recommend you insulate regardless, because it's not going to hurt. It's not going to hurt. It'll be a better performing chimney. I know of at least one manufacturer that's out there that supplies this, is if you don't insulate their liner, they're going to consider that non-warranty because well, I know a couple then. So the reason why is because they're like a warmer vent is going to provide better flow, less creosote, less soot, better maintenance. It's a good idea. Quality over quantity, I suppose, in this right. So the insulation will be specified by the insert manufacturer. And again, likely that's going to be required based on everything that we know and past histories and whatnot. Likely it's going to be required, but it will be dependent upon their listing and their testing. And here's the one I alluded to earlier and I'm going to touch on now is must maintain the functionality of an air-cooled chimney. We all know the 127 chimneys, they're double air-cooled, right? The whole thing weighs about 20 pounds. Well, what happens? What's the normal way of putting in a liner, even this, right? You rip the cap off, you stick the liner up, grab the top plate, put the liner right through the top, seal it so it's weather tight, call it a day. Can't do that. Why? Because it's an air-cooled chimney. You just turned air-cooled chimney into glorified B-vent. Well, that ain't going to do anything. So the whole idea is we want to maintain that airflow. That airflow is what makes that chimney work, and it works really well that way. That's why the double wall works. Well, by capping it off, it stifles it. The airflow's not there, you're gonna heat up. Now we have a situation. So we need to go ahead and make sure that is addressed. And there's gonna be new variant top plates out there. Now, if it's a masonry chimney, you can still do the top plate as normal. If it's a factory-built chimney on a masonry or a solid pack chimney, you can probably get away from that. That's gonna be, again, back to whatever the insert manufacturer tells you. But if it's an air-cooled chimney, and let's face it, most of them on a 127 fireplace are, you're gonna have to you're gonna maintain that air cool. How do you do that? Well, there are some specialized top plates out there in the industry. Copperfield, I know, has one. I know at least 2 other manufacturers have them. There's specialized top plates that basically it's a spacer with a screen and allows the air to go in. Very similar in a way to a direct vent cap. But that's basically maintaining that. You will have to use that. Again, it's all gonna work out with whoever you're grabbing, but that's one of the things you're gonna need to do. Because this task group, one of the things they tried to do is, how does it fail in the field? One of the failure points is it overheated because it got capped. One of the failure points was the header got too warm. One of the failure points was it fell because there's too much weight in there. Another failure point was, well, the masonry was cracked and they only stubbed it so it leaked in everywhere, caused carbon monoxide or fire or what have you. We're trying to address all the big issues. It's not bulletproof, but man, it's gonna be a lot better than it currently is. And all this information I've put on a handout. We've got handouts to be able to pass around so you can do this. If not, come up here after when we're done and you can take a look at it. But I tried to highlight this just so you know what's coming. If you're not, again, get an update on your local NFPA 211 wet level 2 inspection. Chris is passing some out for you. All right, so the repairs. I said must repair the chimney and fireplace as necessary. Written into the standard is this quote: all deficiencies or damage affecting the existing fireplace system that may present a hazard are to be repaired prior to installation. That's what's in the standard right now. The manufacturer will tell you this, but the idea is that, again, if you have big leaning or chimney that's fallen over, or what about that wooden beam that's rotted away, or what about that water damage right next to it, or. We're not telling you have to go fix the roof on the other side of the house. We're saying right here in the chimney and the fireplace area, what affects that will have to be repaired. Again, I want to get you on the same page so you walk into the homeowner and say, well, sorry, Mr. and Mrs. Homeowner, that has to be repaired first. Can't do it until that. That too? All right. If it cannot be repaired, the installation should not go forward. This is your walkaway. It's not, instead of dealing with the angry customer that says, I just want this. Well, you can't do that this way. Upsell them for a fireplace instead, brand new fireplace instead of the factory built. Go that way. That's the safer route anyway. No, in between the clay tile, no. The reason, and what does a liner do, right? I put in a liner, I could, beat the heck out of the clay tiles in there. A lot of times you do, in fact, and put the liner in. So that actually that repairs itself, if you will. So the installation itself will take care of cracked tiles in a masonry. That's the one good part of it. So this gives you, so if it can't be installed, if it can't be repaired, you basically, now you got to tell them, hey, I got to walk away. Otherwise, you're hanging out on a limb. Clearly, they're going to, the manufacturer will give installer clear conditions to walk away from bad situations. If it's a good situation, great. Continue. We know they can be installed safely. It's that small percentage that causes problems. Bad situations, bad workmanship that will end up doing this. But under normal circumstances, a proper unit, no problem. Seems to be working fine. They've been doing it for 40 years. All right, so the physical damage, so everything needs to be repaired. Physical damage, fireplace to the chimney or fireplace, charred, rotted, or water damage near the fireplace or chimney, creosote and soot deposits, those need to be addressed. The liner can be used in place of repairing the flue tiles, because that's what a liner does. So it's still doing its job. Modifications. There are limited modifications that can be done. This is written into the standard, so this is what the manufacturers are going to stay. You can have, it'll be specified exactly what you can do. Whoop. It is limited by the UL standard to removal of the doors and fire screens, removal of the smoke shield, removal or alteration of the damper. All pretty much things you're gonna have to do, but that's about it. If it doesn't fit in it, you're not cutting the back or the sides. You can't put that 10-pound insert into a 5-pound fireplace. This is where you say, I'm sorry, Mr. Homeowner, I can't do that, but we have another option instead. Go back to the showroom floor. Basically, if there is a faceplate that needs airflow to the factory-built fireplace, then yes, it still has to be maintained. Now, the insert manufacturer has the option of doing this and covering those up, making it a worst-case scenario. So he could do that, but it would make it harder. More than likely, they're going to say, okay, Mr. Installer, if there's air circ ducts on there, you have to maintain the ventilation on that face. So you can't close it off. All right, so what's the purpose of all this? We're coming to the end, folks. What's the purpose of this? The whole idea was for this task group and these standards to address the most common problems arising from inserts, all right? Again, there was no codification. Everybody was on different pages. Singing over here, singing over there, different, it was country music, that's rock, this is jazz. Everybody's doing crazy stuff. We want to get everybody on the same sheet of music. So we want to get the manufacturers to detail exactly what they can and can't do and test it a certain way. The certification agencies, you want to get them so they do it in the same in this lab or that lab or the other lab. We want the retailers, installers to be able to say, here's my checklist, here's what I know I can and can't do based on what the manufacturer of this particular insert has said, and that way you have the ability to show this to the installer, because nobody wants an angry customer either. What, you mean I can't put this in here? Yes, you can, because you did this. No, I'm sorry, you can't. It doesn't meet this criteria. And then we want to get those homeowners, because the homeowners are the ones, like I said, you're at the tip of the spear dealing not only with the installation, but also the sales. If they have their heart set on an insert and their fireplace doesn't meet up, then you're basically saying, we have to do something else. Here's an alternative. Because again, what's the alternative? Ticking time bomb. Anybody that's ever dealt with liability, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but anybody that's ever been called out for a fire knows they never want to do that again. Never want to do that again. Make it quality. Be of a mind, if you're so inclined, I'm not doing inserts. I know some installers that do. Retailers, installers, and some manufacturers say, we don't do inserts, period. I don't want to deal with that headache. At least now the headache is a little softer now. Again, it's a little more controlled, but I get it. The market still likes these. Homeowners still like these. Here's the way of the path forward. I'm not going to say, yay, go inserts, make everything an insert. I'm going to say, if you want that path forward, here it is. So this will give retailers and installers clear guidelines. Trying to actually, some people will actually in the task group say, but you're putting all this onus and all this liability on the installer. I'm going, wait a minute. They already have massive liability. This actually makes it more defensible. Because, well, I followed everything the manufacturer said. Look at this, I did all of this. There you go. Point the finger at them. Ultimately, we're looking for safer installations. Safer installations, that's the whole point here. That's really what we're at. We don't want anybody's house to burn down. We don't want anybody to get hurt. We don't want to lose anything. We want a safe install. That's what the goal here is. I think the group that's been working on this for the past 3 years, they've done a good job.